"You're too old, too fat, too embarrassing to even stand next to a successful man." The words echoed through the luxury bridal boutique, loud enough for every customer to hear. Emily Carter froze, clutching the simple handbag she'd carried for nearly 5 years. At 42, she had spent most of her life sacrificing everything for her family. She worked double shifts as a nurse, skipped vacations, wore clothes until they faded, and quietly paid bills that weren't even hers. The woman humiliating her wasn't a stranger. It was her younger sister, Vanessa. Vanessa had always been beautiful, confident, and obsessed with appearances. Designer clothes, expensive handbags, cosmetic procedures. She believed beauty was power, and anyone who didn't fit her standards simply didn't matter. Emily had raised Vanessa after their parents died. While Emily gave up college dreams to work full-time, Vanessa attended the best university. Emily paid tuition. Emily paid rent. Emily even sold the engagement ring her late fiancé had once given her so Vanessa could start her fashion business. Vanessa never thanked her. Instead, success changed her into someone Emily barely recognized. Now Vanessa stood inside the most expensive bridal salon in New York, surrounded by friends filming everything for social media. "Look at her," Vanessa laughed, pointing openly. "Who even invited Auntie Emily? Shopping for curtains instead of dresses?" The room erupted with awkward laughter. Emily lowered her eyes. She hadn't come for herself. She came because Vanessa had begged her to help choose a wedding dress. "You have good taste," Vanessa had said over the phone. Emily believed just maybe her sister wanted to reconnect. She was wrong. Today had been planned as entertainment. Vanessa smiled cruelly. "Tell everyone how much you weigh." Emily stayed silent. "Oh, right," Vanessa continued. "You probably broke the scale." More laughter. Emily inhaled slowly, refusing to cry. Years in emergency rooms had taught her one thing. People reveal themselves when they think someone is powerless. She quietly placed the garment bag she'd brought onto a nearby chair. Inside was their mother's restored wedding veil. Emily had spent months paying a specialist to repair it as a surprise wedding gift. No one knew. No one cared. Vanessa glanced at the old garment bag and rolled her eyes. "What is that? Something for your wedding. If it's old, throw it away." Emily gently picked it back up. "Never mind." She turned toward the exit. Just then the boutique doors opened. Every employee immediately stood straighter. Even the manager hurried forward. "Good afternoon, sir." A tall Korean man entered wearing a charcoal suit without a tie. His calm expression carried quiet authority. Everyone recognized him instantly. Kang Min-jae, founder and CEO of the internationally famous luxury fashion empire, Hanseong Group, one of Asia's youngest billionaires. A man whose custom wedding collections had dressed royalty, celebrities, and world leaders. No one expected him to appear without security or media. He simply nodded politely. "I have an appointment." The manager bowed. "Of course, Chairman Kang." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered excitedly to her friends. "He's even more handsome in person." Without hesitation, she walked directly toward him. "Mr. Kang," she smiled sweetly, extending her hand. "I'm Vanessa. Huge fan." He looked at her hand, then at her face, then walked past without shaking it. Her smile stiffened. Instead, he stopped beside Emily. She assumed he needed directions and stepped aside. "I'm sorry," but he spoke first. "Miss Carter?" Emily blinked. "You know my name?" He smiled softly. "Been looking for you." The boutique fell silent. Vanessa frowned. "Looking for her?" Emily searched his face. "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else." "I don't believe I have." He reached into his jacket and removed an old photograph. The picture showed Emily wearing hospital scrubs nearly 8 years earlier. Beside her lay an unconscious elderly Korean woman in a hospital bed. Emily stared. "I remember this patient." Chairman Kang nodded. "She was my mother." Emily suddenly remembered. Mrs. Kang had arrived after collapsing during a business trip. She spoke almost no English. She had no family nearby. Emily stayed after every shift, fed her, brushed her hair, Ride translated books aloud, even celebrated her birthday inside the hospital because she was completely alone. Emily never knew who she truly was. To Emily, she was simply another patient who deserved kindness. Chairman Kang looked around the room. My mother never forgot you. Emily's eyes softened. Is she all right? He smiled. She recovered. Emily released a relieved breath. I'm so happy. Chairman Kang studied her carefully. My mother spent years asking me to find the nurse who treated her like family instead of a burden. Vanessa interrupted. Excuse me. Chairman Kang ignored her. He continued speaking only to Emily. When investigators finally located you, you refused every attempt to receive compensation. Emily looked confused. I didn't know anyone contacted me. They did. My old apartment burned down years ago. Exactly. He paused. My mother passed away last winter. Emily covered her mouth. I'm so sorry. Her final request was that I thank the woman who restored her faith in humanity. The boutique became completely silent. Employees quietly wiped away tears. Vanessa forced a laugh. That's sweet. Chairman Kang finally looked at her. His expression remained polite. I understand you're her sister. Vanessa smiled proudly. Yes, you must be grateful. She nodded quickly. Of course, Emily gently interrupted. She doesn't owe me anything. Chairman Kang looked back at Emily. That's exactly why my mother admired you. Then he asked something no one expected. Miss Carter. She looked up. Will you walk with me? Confused, she nodded. He led her deeper into the boutique, toward a private showroom hidden behind elegant glass doors. Only VIP clients entered there. The manager rushed ahead, opening the room. Inside hung breathtaking wedding gowns worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, hand-sewn lace, silk imported from Italy, pearls stitched individually, crystal embroidery sparkling beneath golden lights. Emily stared in disbelief. I think we're in the wrong room. Chairman Kang smiled gently. No. He looked directly into her eyes, then quietly said the words that left everyone speechless. Choose your wedding gown. Emily stood frozen, convinced she had misunderstood him. My wedding gown? She asked quietly. Chairman Kang nodded without hesitation. Yes. She looked around the luxurious showroom, then back at him. There must be some mistake. I'm not getting married. He smiled gently. Not yet. The boutique staff exchanged puzzled glances while Vanessa pushed through the crowd, desperate to hear every word. Mr. Kang, she interrupted with a fake smile. Emily has never even dated anyone in years. Surely these dresses aren't meant for her. Chairman Kong calmly replied, I wasn't speaking to you. Vanessa's face flushed red as her friends lowered their phones, sensing that the situation had suddenly changed. Emily shook her head. I appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept something so expensive. Chairman Kang folded his hands behind his back. 8 years ago, my mother offered you money before leaving the hospital. You refused. Emily smiled softly. She needed it more than I did. She was worried about rebuilding her life. She was worth nearly $10 billion, Chairman Kang answered. Emily blinked in surprise. I never knew. Because you never asked who she was. You only cared that she was frightened and alone. His words filled the room with silence. The boutique manager remembered reading the old hospital story in an internal company report and realized this woman standing before them was the same nurse the late Mrs. Kangs had spoken about for years. Chairman Kang slowly walked toward a large display case. Inside rested a breathtaking ivory wedding gown with hand-sewn pearls, delicate Korean embroidery, and a cathedral-length train. This dress, he said, was designed by my mother herself. She always said it should belong to a woman whose heart was more beautiful than her appearance. Emily immediately stepped back. No, I can't possibly wear something so meaningful. She wanted you to. He opened the display case himself, something no employee had ever seen him do. The room watched in complete silence as he carefully lifted the gown from its stand. Vanessa's jealousy grew stronger by the second. She whispered to one of her friends, he's doing this for publicity. Unfortunately for her, Chairman Kang heard every word. Without raising his voice, he said, "If I wanted publicity, there would already be cameras outside this building. Today is private, because gratitude doesn't need an audience." Several employees quietly nodded in agreement. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother was one of the strongest women I've ever met." Chairman Kang smiled sadly. "She said the strongest woman she ever met was named Emily Carter." Vanessa couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Enough. She's just a nurse. She isn't beautiful. She isn't rich. Why does she deserve all this?" Chairman Kang finally turned toward her completely. "Would you like an honest answer?" Vanessa crossed her arms confidently. "Yes, because beauty fades, wealth changes, kindness becomes legacy." His words struck the room harder than anyone expected. Vanessa laughed nervously. "Legacy? She spent her whole life taking care of everyone else. Look at her now." Emily remained silent, refusing to defend herself. Chairman Kang replied, "Exactly. She sacrificed promotions to care for sick patients. She postponed happiness so others could have hope. She carried responsibilities that belonged to people who never thanked her. Yet she still smiles." "Tell me, Miss Vanessa, how many people would describe you that way?" Vanessa had no answer. Her friends slowly stepped away from her. One even stopped recording and slipped her phone into her purse. Chairman Kang continued, "My investigators learned everything. Emily worked overtime to pay your university tuition. She paid your apartment rent. She funded your first fashion collection after selling the engagement ring left by the man she loved. She never told anyone because she believed family should help family." Gasps spread across the boutique as every eye turned toward Vanessa. Emily looked embarrassed. "Please, you don't have to say all that." "Why not?" Chairman Kang asked gently. "Truth should never be hidden simply because it makes selfish people uncomfortable." Vanessa's face turned pale. She looked around hoping someone would support her, but no one did. Even the boutique manager looked disappointed. "Is that true?" One of Vanessa's bridesmaids whispered. Vanessa couldn't answer. Emily quietly spoke instead. "She was young. I wanted her to have opportunities I never had." Chairman Kang looked at Emily with admiration. "Even now you protect the person who hurt you." Emily sighed softly. "She's still my little sister." Those simple words touched everyone listening. Chairman Kang carefully handed the wedding gown to the head designer. "Please prepare a fitting." Emily quickly shook her head. "Really, there's no reason." He smiled. "There is every reason." Before she could respond, another elegant woman entered the showroom. She appeared to be in her late 60s, dressed in a graceful navy suit with silver hair tied neatly behind her head. Every employee bowed respectfully. Chairman Kang smiled warmly for the first time that day. Aunt Sun-hee, perfect timing. The woman walked directly toward Emily instead of him. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "You're Emily?" Emily nodded nervously. The older woman suddenly embraced her. "Thank you for giving my sister dignity during the final months of her life. She wrote your name in every journal she kept after leaving America." Emily stood speechless as the woman gently held both of her hands. "She prayed every birthday that you would someday find the happiness you sacrificed for everyone else." Emily could no longer hold back her tears. Emily gently wiped away her tears, still overwhelmed by everything happening around her. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Aunt Sun-hee smiled through her own tears. "You don't have to say anything. My sister spent years hoping this day would come." Chairman Kang nodded and motioned for the boutique staff to continue preparing the fitting room. Emily hesitated. "Please, I really don't want everyone making such a fuss over me." The head designer smiled warmly. "Miss Carter, we've dressed queens, actresses, and billionaires. Today is the first time we've been honored to dress a truly remarkable woman." Emily blushed with embarrassment, while several employees quietly applauded. Vanessa could barely contain her anger. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "You're acting like she's some kind of saint." Chairman Kang calmly faced her. "No, saints don't exist, but grateful hearts do." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "She isn't even attractive. Look at her. She's overweight, she's middle-aged, and she's completely ordinary. The words echoed through the boutique, but this time nobody laughed. Instead, everyone looked at Vanessa with disappointment. Emily lowered her head, the old insecurities she had buried years ago slowly returning. She remembered every cruel nickname from childhood, every mirror she had avoided, every family gathering where Vanessa mocked her appearance. Chairman Kang noticed the sadness in her eyes. He stepped beside her and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. When my mother first woke up in the hospital, she couldn't remember anyone's face except one, Emily's. Do you know why? She said. The nurse with the warm smile made her feel safe. She never once described Emily's weight. She never mentioned her age. She only remembered kindness. The room remained silent. Chairman Kang continued. People obsessed with appearances eventually discover that beauty cannot comfort a frightened soul. Character can. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Fine speeches don't change reality. Chairman Kang nodded. You're right. Reality is exactly why we're here. He turned toward the boutique manager. Would you please bring the file? The manager quickly returned, carrying a thick leather folder embossed with the Hanseong Group logo. Chairman Kang opened it and handed several documents to Emily. She looked confused. What are these? Several months ago, my mother established the Emily Carter Foundation. Emily stared at him. Foundation? Yes. Its purpose is to provide scholarships for nursing students who choose compassion over profit and financial assistance for elderly patients without family. Emily's hands began trembling. This can't be real. It is. My mother personally funded it before she passed away. Emily looked down at the final page where her own name appeared as the lifetime chairperson. Her eyes widened. I'm listed as director. Chairman Kang smiled. She insisted. She said only one person truly understood why the foundation should exist. Emily looked completely overwhelmed. But I don't know anything about running a foundation. Aunt Sun Hee gently squeezed her shoulder. You already know the only lesson that matters. Love people without expecting anything in return. The rest can be learned. Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks as memories flooded back. The lonely patients she had comforted, the forgotten birthdays she celebrated during night shifts, the hands she had held during final moments, never imagining that anyone was watching. Vanessa stepped closer, unable to hide her disbelief. You're giving all of this to her? Chairman Kang answered simply. No, my mother is. She's gone, Vanessa snapped. Chairman Kang looked directly into her eyes. A person's kindness continues long after they're gone. My mother believed Emily's kindness deserved the chance to continue as well. Several boutique employees quietly wiped away tears. One young assistant whispered, I became a designer because my grandmother was cared for by nurses like her. Emily smiled at the young woman. Then make dresses that help women feel beautiful, not judged. The assistant nodded emotionally. Vanessa suddenly felt the room slipping away from her. The admiration she expected for herself had completely shifted to the sister she had spent years humiliating. Desperate to regain attention, she forced a smile and walked toward Emily. Sis, maybe I've been a little harsh over the years. Emily looked at her with gentle eyes but said nothing. Vanessa continued. We can forget the past, right? Chairman Kang quietly observed without interfering. Emily had waited years to hear an apology, but something about Vanessa's expression felt rehearsed. There was no regret in her eyes, only fear of losing status. Emily softly asked, Do you remember the winter when I worked 3 jobs so you wouldn't have to quit college? Vanessa hesitated. Of course. Do you remember whose rent I paid after your business failed? Vanessa looked away. I think so. Emily nodded sadly. Do you remember selling the engagement ring that Daniel gave me because you needed startup money? Vanessa remained silent. Emily's voice stayed calm. I remember every sacrifice because I made them willingly. But I also remember that you never once asked what those sacrifices cost me. The boutique became so quiet that even the sound of someone's breathing seemed loud. Vanessa realized for the first time that the sister she always considered weak was finally finding the courage to speak the truth. Vanessa's confident expression slowly crumbled as every eye in the boutique remained fixed on her. For years, she had always controlled the conversation, twisting every family story until she appeared successful, and Emily seemed like the pathetic older sister who simply couldn't keep up with life. But today, no one believed the version she had spent years creating. Emily looked at her quietly, not with anger but with sadness. "I never wanted repayment," she said softly. "I only wanted a sister." Those 6 words hit harder than any accusation ever could. Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. One of her bridesmaids finally broke the silence. "Vanessa, is it true your sister paid for your education?" Vanessa avoided her gaze. Another friend asked, "She sold her engagement ring for your business?" Still no answer. The silence became the answer everyone needed. Chairman Kang calmly closed the foundation documents and handed them back to Emily. "My mother often said that gratitude reveals character just as clearly as hardship does." Emily carefully held the folder against her chest. "I don't know if I deserve any of this." Aunt Sun-hee smiled gently. "That is exactly why you do." At that moment, the boutique's chief designer returned, carrying the ivory wedding gown. Up close, it looked even more breathtaking than before. Thousands of tiny pearls shimmered across the bodice, delicate floral embroidery flowed down the skirt like falling blossoms, and the elegant train stretched across the polished floor. Every stitch had been sewn by hand. "Miss Carter," the designer said respectfully, "may I help you try it on?" Emily instinctively stepped back. "I've never even worn a designer dress." The designer smiled. "Then today will be your first." Emily hesitated before quietly agreeing. As she disappeared into the fitting room, Vanessa clenched her fists so tightly that her manicured nails dug into her palms. She had dreamed of becoming the center of attention in this boutique, imagining photographers, compliments, and admiration. Instead, everyone was waiting outside a fitting room for the woman she had spent years calling old and fat. Minutes passed in complete anticipation. Then the fitting room door slowly opened. Emily stepped out wearing the gown. An audible gasp filled the room. The dress fit her almost perfectly, as though it had somehow been made specifically for her. The elegant neckline highlighted her warm smile. The flowing skirt gave her graceful movement, and the soft ivory fabric seemed to erase years of insecurity from her face. She looked radiant, not because she had suddenly become younger or thinner, but because genuine confidence had quietly replaced years of self-doubt. Even Emily barely recognized the woman staring back from the mirrors. Tears filled her eyes. I I don't remember ever feeling beautiful." Chairman Kang looked at her with quiet respect. "My mother believed true beauty waits patiently until someone finally sees it." The boutique employees applauded spontaneously. Some customers who had wandered near the private showroom even stopped to admire her. One elderly woman smiled and whispered to her husband, "She looks happier than any bride I've ever seen." Vanessa stared in disbelief. For the first time in her life, she realized that beauty could not be manufactured by expensive cosmetics or luxury brands. It came from something much deeper that Emily had possessed all along. But instead of accepting that truth, jealousy consumed her. She suddenly laughed loudly. "Wonderful performance. But let's be realistic. She's wearing a wedding dress with no groom." The applause faded. Emily quietly lowered her eyes. Chairman Kang remained calm. "And why is that amusing?" Vanessa folded her arms. "Because no successful man would choose someone like her." Chairman Kang looked at Emily for a long moment before answering. "You assume every successful man values appearances above character." Vanessa shrugged confidently. "Most do." Chairman Kang slowly reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small velvet box. The room instantly fell silent again. Emily looked confused. "What is that?" Chairman Kang smiled gently but said nothing. Instead, he opened the box. Inside rested an elegant diamond ring that reflected the boutique lights with remarkable brilliance. Gasps spread across the room. Vanessa's eyes widened. "What?" Chairman Kang took one slow step toward Emily. "Several months before my mother passed away," he said softly, "she made me promise her one thing." Emily listened quietly. She told me that if I ever found the woman who had restored her faith in people, I should never let her walk through life believing she was unworthy of love. Emily's heart began racing. "Mr. Kang," he interrupted gently, "please call me Min Jae." No one dared move. No one even breathed loudly. Chairman Kang looked directly into Emily's tear-filled eyes. "Since the day I learned your story, I've read every letter my mother wrote about you. I visited the hospital where you worked. I spoke to former patients, doctors, and nurses. Every single person described the same woman, someone who gave hope to strangers while quietly carrying her own pain." Emily could barely speak. "Why are you telling me this?" A warm smile appeared on his face. "Because before anyone chooses a wedding gown," he carefully held the velvet ring box in both hands, "someone has to ask the most important question first." The entire boutique seemed to stop breathing as Chairman Kang stood before Emily with the open velvet ring box resting in his hands. Even the soft music playing through the speakers felt distant. Emily stared at the sparkling diamond, then looked into Min Jae's eyes, searching for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding. "Mr. Min Jae," she whispered, "please don't do this because you feel you owe me. Kindness should never become a debt." A gentle smile appeared on his face. "That's exactly why I'm here. This isn't about repaying a debt." He took another step closer. "When my mother first told me about the nurse who stayed beside her every night after long shifts, I admired you. When I began reading the journals she left behind, I respected you. When I quietly learned how you spent your life sacrificing your own happiness for everyone else, I realized something unexpected." Emily's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the room around her. "I realized I wanted to meet the woman who could inspire that kind of love without ever asking for recognition." He paused before continuing. "For the past 6 months, I've visited the hospital several times without introducing myself. I watched how you treated every patient exactly the way you treated my mother. You remembered birthdays, comforted frightened families, bought meals for homeless patients from your own paycheck, and stayed long after your shift ended whenever someone was dying alone. None of those people knew who you were. None of them could give you anything in return. Yet you never expected anything except the chance to help." Tears streamed down Emily's face. She remembered the quiet man who had occasionally sat in the hospital waiting room, reading newspapers. She had offered him coffee once because he looked exhausted, never realizing it was Min Jae. He smiled softly. "You asked if I had eaten that day. You didn't know my name. You didn't know I owned the hospital. You simply cared." Several nurses who happened to be shopping in the boutique recognized Emily and began quietly crying as they listened. One whispered, "That's exactly who she is every single day." Min Jae looked at Emily with complete sincerity. "I'm not asking because my mother wished it. I'm asking because I have never met anyone whose heart makes me want to become a better man." Emily gently shook her head. "You barely know me," he answered immediately. "Character is revealed by actions, not by introductions." Vanessa suddenly stepped forward. "This is insane," she shouted. "You're proposing to a woman you hardly know?" Min Jae calmly turned toward her. "No, I'm proposing to a woman whose life I spent months learning about before I ever spoke to her." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "She's not your type." Min Jae replied without hesitation. "She is exactly my type." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Emily covered her mouth, unable to stop crying. She had spent years believing no one could ever see beyond her age, her weight, or the wrinkles earned from endless night shifts. Yet here stood a man who admired the parts of her she had always considered invisible. Min Jae slowly lowered himself onto one knee. Every employee, customer, and guest watched with tears in their eyes. "Emily Carter," he said softly, "I cannot promise that life will always be easy. I cannot promise we will never disagree. But I promise to honor the kindness that defines you, to stand beside you instead of in front of you, to support the dreams you've delayed for everyone else, and to remind you every day that you are worthy of the same love you've spent your entire life giving away." Emily could barely breathe. Minjae continued, "Will you allow me the privilege of building that future with you?" The boutique fell into complete silence. Vanessa looked around desperately, expecting someone to object, but instead she saw smiling faces, tearful eyes, and quiet admiration directed entirely toward Emily. Aunt Sunhee gently whispered, "My sister would be smiling right now." Emily looked at the ring, then at Minjae, then around the room. Her gaze finally stopped on the restored wedding veil she had brought as a gift for Vanessa. She slowly walked over, lifted the carefully repaired veil from the garment bag, and held it against her heart. "My mother wore this when she married my father," she whispered. "I spent months restoring it because I wanted my sister to have something precious on her wedding day." Vanessa lowered her eyes, shame finally replacing pride. Emily smiled sadly before turning back toward Minjae. "I spent so many years believing my story was about sacrifice that I forgot happiness could still be waiting for me." She took a deep breath, tears shining in her eyes, and reached out her trembling hand toward him. Minjae gently took Emily's trembling hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to answer because everyone is watching. If your answer is no, I will still honor you, support the foundation, and remain grateful for what you did for my mother." Those words made Emily pause. There was no pressure in his voice, no expectation, no pride, only respect. For the first time in many years, she felt truly seen, not for what she looked like, not for what she owned, but for who she was. A warm smile slowly spread across her face. "All my life," she whispered, "people have chosen me only when they needed something. You are the first person who has chosen me simply because I'm me." Minjae's smile grew brighter. Emily laughed through her tears. "So, my answer is yes." The boutique instantly erupted into applause. Employees cheered, customers wiped away tears, and several people began clapping so loudly that the sound echoed through the showroom. Aunt Sunhee covered her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. "My sister's wish has finally come true," she whispered. Minjae carefully slipped the diamond ring onto Emily's finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had always belonged there. The room applauded even louder. Emily looked at the sparkling ring, but smiled far more at the man standing before her than at the diamond itself. He rose to his feet, and for a brief moment, they simply looked at one another, both smiling through happy tears. Then, without saying a word, Minjae gently embraced her. It wasn't dramatic or extravagant. It was quiet, warm, and filled with genuine affection. Even the boutique staff found themselves crying openly. Vanessa stood frozen several feet away, watching the sister she had mocked become the happiest woman in the room. She remembered every cruel joke she had made about Emily's appearance, every birthday she had forgotten, every favor she had accepted without gratitude. Those memories now felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. Slowly, she walked toward Emily. Her confident posture had disappeared. Her voice shook. "Emily." Emily turned to face her. Vanessa lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Emily remained silent. Vanessa continued, tears filling her eyes. "Not because today embarrassed me. Not because everyone knows the truth. I'm sorry because I spent years hurting the one person who loved me without conditions." She looked down at the floor. "You gave up your dreams so I could chase mine. You sold the only thing your fiancé left you because I wanted to start a business. I never once asked what it cost you." Her shoulders began to tremble. "I convinced myself you would always forgive me, so I never bothered to change." The room listened quietly. This apology sounded different. There were no excuses, no blame, no attempts to protect her pride. Emily stepped closer. "Do you remember what Mom used to tell us?" Vanessa nodded through her tears. "Family isn't the people who never make mistakes. Family is the people who find the courage to admit them." Emily smiled gently. "I remember." Vanessa looked up with hope and fear mixed together. "Can you ever forgive me?" Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into the garment bag and carefully removed their mother's restored wedding veil. She unfolded it with great care before placing it into Vanessa's hands. Vanessa stared at it in disbelief. You're still giving this to me? Emily nodded. I restored it because I wanted you to carry a piece of mom with you on your wedding day. My heart hasn't changed. Vanessa burst into tears, hugging the veil tightly against her chest. She then wrapped her arms around Emily, crying harder than she ever had in her life. Emily hugged her back without hesitation. Around them, nearly everyone in the boutique was crying. Even the photographers hired to document Vanessa's dress fitting quietly lowered their cameras, realizing some moments were too meaningful to interrupt. After a long embrace, Vanessa stepped back and looked at Min Jae. Please take care of her, she said softly. She spent so many years taking care of everyone else that she forgot she deserved someone to take care of her too. Min Jae smiled warmly. I promise. Just then, the boutique manager approached, carrying an elegant velvet folder. Chairman Kang, she said respectfully. The wedding collection your mother designed included one final note sealed until today. Min Jae looked surprised. A final note? She nodded and handed him the envelope. Written across the front in graceful handwriting were the words, asterisk to Emily, if destiny ever brings you to this room. Asterisk. Emily's hands trembled as Min Jae carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and an old photograph of Mrs. Kang smiling beside Emily in the hospital, taken secretly by one of the nurses years before. Emily gasped as she realized it was the only photograph she had ever shared with the woman she had cared for like family. Emily carefully accepted the faded photograph, her fingers trembling as she traced the smiling face of Mrs. Kang. She had no memory of anyone taking the picture. In it, Mrs. Kang was sitting in her hospital bed with a birthday cupcake in front of her, while Emily stood beside her wearing wrinkled blue scrubs, laughing with genuine happiness. Emily smiled through tears. She looked so healthy that day. Min Jae nodded. She said it was the first birthday in years when she didn't feel alone. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, remembering how frightened the elderly woman had been when she first arrived at the hospital. She had simply done what she hoped someone would do for her own mother if she were ever alone in another country. She unfolded the handwritten letter with great care. The room became completely silent as she began reading aloud. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then my son has finally found the angel who reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. You never asked who I was. You never cared how much money I had. You saw only an old woman who needed someone to hold her hand. Every night after your long shifts, you stayed a little longer just to make sure I wasn't afraid. You celebrated my birthday when everyone else had forgotten. You taught me that family is not always connected by blood. Because of you, I returned home, believing people could still love without expecting rewards. I prayed every day that someone would one day love you with the same kindness you gave to strangers. If my son is standing beside you now, then heaven has answered my final prayer. Whether you become his wife or simply remain his friend, never again believe the cruel voices that called you ordinary. The world needs more hearts like yours, and I hope you never hide that heart again. Thank you for giving me dignity when I had almost lost hope. You will forever be my daughter in spirit. With endless love, Soo-jin Kang. By the time Emily reached the final sentence, tears were flowing down nearly every face in the boutique. She gently pressed the letter against her heart and whispered, Thank you. Min Jae quietly wiped away his own tears before taking Emily's hand once more. She always wanted to tell you those words herself. Emily smiled softly. Somehow, I feel like she just did. Aunt Sun-hee embraced both of them, unable to speak through her tears. Vanessa watched from a short distance, clutching their mother's restored wedding veil. She finally understood something that no amount of beauty, money, or success could ever replace. Emily had earned love by giving it away freely, while she had spent years demanding admiration without offering compassion. Slowly, she walked toward the guests who had witnessed everything. Everyone, she said with a shaky voice. I owe my sister more than an apology. She turned to Emily. For years I told people I built my life by myself. That was a lie. Everything I became started with your sacrifices. Every opportunity I had existed because you gave up one of your own. I stole the credit for your love." Emily looked at her gently, but remained silent. Vanessa continued, "Tomorrow morning, I'm transferring half of my company's shares into the Emily Carter Foundation. Not because it will erase what I did, it won't, but because I finally understand what real success should be used for." Gasps spread across the room. Emily immediately shook her head. "Vanessa, you don't have to do that." Vanessa smiled sadly. "Maybe I don't have to, but I want to. For the first time in my life, I want to do something that isn't about me." Chairman Kang nodded respectfully. "My mother would have admired that decision." Vanessa laughed softly through her tears. "I hope one day I become someone worthy of that compliment." The boutique manager stepped forward carrying a small velvet case. "Mrs. Kang left one final gift," she said. Emily looked surprised. Inside the case rested a delicate silver necklace with a tiny cherry blossom pendant. Engraved on the back were the words, "**, kindness never ages." Emily could no longer hold back her emotions. She carefully placed the necklace around her neck, holding the pendant close to her heart. At that moment, the morning sunlight poured through the boutique's tall windows, filling the showroom with a warm golden glow. The ivory wedding gown shimmered beautifully. The diamond ring sparkled softly on Emily's finger, and the restored family veil rested safely in Vanessa's hands. No one spoke for several seconds because the moment felt too precious to interrupt. Finally, Min-jae smiled at Emily. "There's one last surprise waiting for you." Emily laughed gently. "After today, I'm almost afraid to ask what that could be." He offered her his hand. "Come with me." Still holding the letter from Mrs. Kang close to her heart, Emily placed her hand in his, and together they walked toward the private elevator at the back of the boutique, completely unaware that an even bigger surprise was waiting upstairs. The private elevator doors opened onto the rooftop of the Hansong building, where Emily stopped in complete amazement. What she expected to be another luxurious surprise was something entirely different. Instead of celebrities, photographers, or extravagant decorations, the rooftop had been transformed into a beautiful garden filled with cherry blossom trees, white roses, and hundreds of handwritten notes hanging from delicate branches. A gentle breeze carried the fragrance of fresh flowers as soft violin music played in the background. Emily looked around in wonder. "What is all this?" Min-jae smiled. "This is where my mother wanted your story to end." Curious, Emily walked toward the nearest tree and removed one of the handwritten notes. It read, "Thank you for staying with my father during his final night. He wasn't alone because of you." Another note said, "You bought medicine for my daughter when I couldn't afford it." Another read, "You sat with my grandmother every Sunday because she had no visitors." Emily's hands began trembling as she realized every note had been written by someone whose life she had quietly touched over the years. She continued, walking through the garden, reading dozens more messages. Some were from former patients, some from nurses she had trained, others from complete strangers who had simply witnessed her kindness. She had never expected anyone to remember those moments. Yet here they were, hanging like blossoms on every tree. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I thought no one noticed." Min-jae gently answered, "Kindness is often silent, but it is never invisible." Suddenly, the garden gates opened, and more than 100 people slowly walked inside. Emily gasped as she recognized many familiar faces. Elderly patients she had cared for years earlier, children who had recovered from serious illnesses, doctors, hospital staff, cleaning workers, ambulance drivers, and families whose loved ones she had comforted, all smiled as they approached her. One elderly man walked with a cane until he reached Emily. "You probably don't remember me," he said with a smile. Emily looked carefully before her eyes widened. "Mr. Thompson?" The old man laughed. "You remembered." Emily hugged him warmly. "Of course I did." One by one, people came forward to thank her. A young woman placed a graduation photo into Emily's hands. "You paid my nursing school application fee when my mother couldn't." A little boy, now a healthy teenager, smiled shyly. You stayed with me every Christmas because my parents had to work." Another woman wiped away tears. "You were the last person my husband spoke to before he passed away. He said your kindness gave him peace." Emily could no longer stop crying. She had spent years believing her life had been ordinary, yet every person standing before her carried proof that even the smallest acts of compassion had changed someone forever. Vanessa quietly watched from a distance, overwhelmed by the love surrounding her sister. She finally understood why admiration earned through kindness lasted much longer than admiration earned through beauty. She walked over and stood beside Emily. "I spent my whole life trying to become unforgettable," she said softly. "You became unforgettable simply by caring." Emily smiled and gently squeezed her sister's hand. "It's never too late to become the person you want to be." Vanessa nodded with tears in her eyes. "Then today will be my first day." Aunt Sun-hee stepped forward carrying the restored wedding veil. She carefully placed it over Emily's hair. "My sister dreamed of seeing this moment," she whispered. "Today, I have the honor of fulfilling that dream." Min-jae took Emily's hands once again. "This garden will become the home of the Emily Carter Foundation. Every scholarship, every patient we help, every nurse we support will begin here." Emily looked around at the smiling faces surrounding her and realized that happiness had found her only after she stopped searching for recognition and continued choosing kindness anyway. Months later, their wedding was held in the same rooftop garden beneath blooming cherry blossoms. There were no movie stars or politicians in the front row. Instead, every seat was filled with nurses, elderly patients, hospital workers, children whose lives had been changed, and ordinary people whose hearts Emily had quietly touched over the years. Vanessa proudly stood beside her sister, wearing their mother's restored veil with gratitude before placing it into Emily's hands just before the ceremony, saying, "Mom wanted it to belong to the daughter who lived by her heart." Emily wore the veil as she walked toward Min-jae, and when they exchanged vows, there was hardly a dry eye among the guests. After the ceremony, they shared their first kiss as husband and wife beneath a shower of cherry blossom petals, while everyone applauded with joyful tears. The Emily Carter Foundation soon expanded across several countries, providing scholarships for compassionate nurses, funding treatment for lonely elderly patients, and creating programs that reminded healthcare workers that empathy was as valuable as medicine. Years later, whenever people asked Chairman Kang what made him fall in love with Emily, he always smiled and gave the same answer. The world called her old and fat. I simply saw the most beautiful heart I had ever met. And whenever Emily looked at the silver pendant engraved with the words, "Kindness never ages," she smiled, knowing that the greatest love story of her life had begun on the very day someone tried to make her feel worthless, and ended with a life filled with love, family, forgiveness, and a happiness she had once believed she would never deserve. Like, subscribe, and support my channel. I really need your support. If you enjoy my video, please share it and leave your feedback in the comments.